A bad sales process and a bad sales structure is one of the key problems why online service-based businesses cannot scale. And if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you might be having the same problem. And in this video, I'm going to show you my 7-step sales process that I've used to generate my clients over $40 million in sales. And what sets this script apart from the 90% of other sales processes and scripts out there is there are going to be 2 key defining points that will allow you to avoid objections that you typically get at the end of sales calls, such as "I'll think about it" or "Can I let you know later?" So these 2 critical points you absolutely must nail in your sales process, and if you're not doing them, probably the biggest reason why your sales are not optimized and you're missing out on sales opportunities. So without any further ado, I'm going to take you now to my dashboard, to my share screen, and walk you through each step of the process, how it works, give you plenty of examples to make sure that you fully understand it and that you and your team can implement it in as soon as a week from now. So without any further ado, let's get started. All right, let's get started. In this video, again, I'm going to show you the entire process that it takes to meet a prospect online, to understand their problems, their goals, and pitch your product in a way that will tightly correlate and loop back to their pain points and goals, and hopefully help you close that prospect at a very high rate. My clients typically close sales anywhere between 20 to up to even 80%, depending on the niche, the price point, and the market. And in this video, I can guarantee you that if you implement everything I'll teach you, you will increase your sales by at least 20-30% from your current baseline. And just forward, a lot of the things I'm going to explain in this video, I learned from Cole Gordon, who's a sales trainer. And if you'd like to find out more about his work, you can go on his website. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first point of any sales call is going to be an introduction phase. An introduction phase is also called rapport phase. Is basically when you greet the prospect and you kind of like break ice for a couple of minutes. I'm not going to stick or stay around this topic too much. The only thing I can tell you about introductions is you don't have to make them too long, because a lot of times people essentially make this mistake that they think they have to become a prospect's friend almost to maximize the odds of the person of buying from them, but that's not necessarily true. You don't have to be your prospect's friend. You can be friendly with them, but think about when you're in doctor's office. A doctor is not trying to become your friend. He's trying to, he'll maybe tell you a few pleasant words and greet you, ask you about how your day was, but then he will crack on with questions and try to understand why you're ill or why you're sick or what your complaints are, and then essentially prescribe you medication, right? So it's kind of like almost done in the same way. And after you go past the round of pleasantries for about 2-3 minutes, you can ask them where they're calling in from or whatever. You move on to the stage that's called, sorry, I was going to write report. That stage is called frame. You're supposed to set the frame of the sales call, and essentially what setting the frame is taking the leadership and charge of the call. It's almost you taking the control of the call, but I don't mean you taking the control of the call in a bad way. A lot of times people understand it in a bad way, but not really. Again, what I would like to propose is you go back to a doctor's frame, doctor's example. When you essentially start the triage process with a doctor, the doctor essentially plunges into your conversation by asking you basically a barrage of questions, right? He basically bombards you with questions and to try to understand the root of your problem. And that's what's called leadership. Now, in a doctor's office, that's kind of like the given, right? We're trained to expect that I'm going to essentially shut up and the doctor is going to ask me questions. On sales calls, it's a little bit different, again, depending on what you sell, and you actually have to state that you're going to take the leadership of the call. And the way stating works, typically, the syntax or kind of like the phrasing for that is you say, "Hey, Mark, I'm again happy to be on this call. What I found works best for this call is I'm going to ask you questions about your online business, and I'm going to try to understand what specifically doesn't work about lead gen. And then based off of that, I can essentially tell you if it's something I can help you fix. And if I can, I'm going to show you essentially the entire A to Z, how I help my clients fix their lead gen issues. And if I can, then I can at least give you free resources or maybe point you in the direction that you need the most." Does that sound fair? Yeah, sounds fair. So when you set the frame like that, that essentially projects to Mark that, okay, the way this sales call is going to go is Nazim is going to ask me questions. So my job is to sit back and answer his questions, right? As simple as that. Now, if you skip the frame part, well, then that's going to be difficult. A lot of times people complain. They say, hey, what do I do? Like, I try to ask my prospect questions, but prospect starts bombarding me with questions back, right? And I kind of like lose the control of the call, and then the prospect kind of like takes it in the direction they need, but that's not really even good for the prospect, because that doesn't allow you to do your information gathering and your kind of like a triage to try to understand the prospect needs, right? And but you know the best what to ask or how to do the call to try to understand the prospect's problems. A prospect has problems, and it's your responsibility to essentially take charge of the call and put it and pull it in the direction that you need to try to understand if you can help them or not. It's for their own good, right? So after you do frame, the next point is going to be information gathering, right? Information gathering now here splits into two different parts, which is the pain points and then goals. Now, look, pain points and goals and information gathering as a whole is probably one of the most important parts of the sales call that you have to dial in, that will help you to hopefully, when you drop the price and you essentially try to close the client, this part will essentially help you do objection handling in a very ninja way that I'll explain later in the call. But it's got to do with looping back to their pain points and looping back to their goals, and trying to basically keeping the prospect accountable to what they said prior. It doesn't have to be Machiavellian or sound like a trap. You can do it in a very logical way. And but the most important here in the info gathering phase is try to, first of all, truly understand if you can help your prospect. And the best way to do that is to try to understand what's their problem. Again, going back to doctor's frame. If you come to an allergologist, and the reason why I'm explaining it, not the reason why I'm giving you allergologist examples, because of this nose tape. Everybody tells me I want to be like Alex Hormozy, and though I like Alex's content, I genuinely have very severe stuffed nose because of allergies. So I'll give you this example. But if you go to an allergologist and you tell the allergologist that you have, let's say, stomach cramps, which is not a typical symptom of someone who suffers with allergies, guess what? Allergologist is going to refer you to someone else. But if you tell them that you have watery eyes and stuffed nose, allergologist is going to say, okay, this is something I can work with. And the only way he can understand that is when he asks you questions about your pain points and also what you're doing at the moment, right? So the kinds of questions you can ask about their pain points is, first of all, what's their main challenge? Right? If someone is suffering with lead gen from lack of lead gen, you say, hey, what's your biggest problem? They say lead gen. And then you can kind of like break down their problems further. You can say, okay, so what are your current efforts, right? What's not working right now? You can ask them about the results or lack of thereof, like what are the results? You can ask them basically what has worked in the past and what has not, right? And then you can also ask them about why now? Why now is the best time to do this? And many other questions. I think the question specifically that you can ask, I'll record another video. I want to make this video about like 15-20 minutes long. But essentially, with information gathering, you first try to understand what's their biggest problem and what they're doing wrong that essentially makes them to have the problem. And then you also try to understand goals. Goals can be monetary or should be monetary, and then also non-monetary. And the reason why it's good to also ask about their non-monetary goals is because making money is great, but usually making money is just means to getting to a certain lifestyle. And again, monetary, non-monetary, I guess it's more like a, like an example or a specific case for business programs. But even when it comes to, for example, like weight loss, you can frame it as in, hey, this is essentially like a specific amount of kilograms that you'd like to use. And then you can tie the kilograms into the like a broader picture, right? Like how your general life is going to improve and where you see yourself after losing the kilograms. The reason why you should ask again the non-monetary or like lifestyle questions, because while this is an objective and tangible reason, which is cool, but really the best reasons are the reasons that are not tangible or that are subjective to that person's vision of their life, because that's really the most important, and that's really what matters when it comes to transformation. Like the general view of their life is what is going to motivate them to do the transformation. And monetary goals or goals about how many kilograms you want to lose are essentially just means to getting to these basically broader vision goals, right? So try to get that sometimes in very hardcore B2B niches. For example, if you are talking to someone who runs, let's say, a $20 million e-com agency, and you're trying to pitch them a new automation software or solution, it will be very difficult and also kind of stupid to try to tie the automation to their lifestyle goal. So you have to adjust the script a little bit, right? And I've almost actually seen examples when non-monetary goals or kind of like these dream lifestyle-based questions are asked in a very bad context, and it would almost like even like do the opposite and piss off the prospect, because the prospect was there for an objective, extremely goal-driven conversation. So you have to know how to differentiate, right? So that's number 3, info gathering. Now, the fourth part is one of the more important parts that really sets the script apart or the sales process apart from others that are being trained on majority of videos like sales training videos, etc., etc. And there'll be 2 of these points. This is the first one, and the fourth one is called the transition phase. Again, word by word, everything like Cole Gordon trains. So a transition phase is a good opportunity to basically pull back and let the prospect to come to you. What happens in majority of sales calls is, sure, you can do an introduction, you can set the frame and do info gathering, but then they directly jump into the pitch, right? And the way the pitch is basically you talking about the product and then dropping the price. But the reason why that's good, it doesn't work, is because it looks almost like you don't have any evaluation process, and it also feels too forced and like too little effort and buy-in on the prospect side. Allow me to explain. If you ask the prospect about their goals, about their pain points, and then you say, okay, cool, well, here's my product and here's how much it costs, what's going to happen is the prospect is going to say, yeah, okay, fine. They basically go into this kind of like lazy presentation mode, and then they're going to say, okay, fine, sounds good. Let me think about it and get back to you, right? But if you do a transition and pull back a little bit and ask the prospect to confirm that they would like to essentially carry on with the sales call, it re-engages them back in the sales call. And, it's very much permission-based sales. The way transition syntax sounds, or like the way the transition word track sounds, is something like this. For example, I'm talking to the same Mark, I guess our prospect's name was, and I can say something like, Mark, based on what you told me, I can totally see why you're experiencing lead gen problems, and your monetary goals are not too far off from essentially what I help to achieve for my clients. Actually, Nick, who is in your position, also in your industry, I've helped them to go from 10K to 30K per month by essentially exploding their lead gen in just over 2 months. And he had a similar issue, and we helped them out fairly quickly. So I don't see anything too crazy about your problem, and I'm more than happy to explain you the entire A to Z, how we can help you to seal this lead gen problem. I'm happy to do that, but you let me know where you want to go from here. And this is the biggest question, right? When you tell them, but you let me know where you want to go from here. I heard you out. right? I understand what your problem is. I understand your goals, and I've already done it for other clients, but you let me know where you want to go from here. And what the prospect is going to say is, yeah, sure. Let's move on. Let's move on, and I would like to hear more about the pitch. It sounds like a small detail, but it's still a very big detail, because what it feels like to the prospect is that they're brought back into the conversation, and it's almost as if you almost you make them a part of the sales call as well, right? It's not just you hearing them out and then kind of like saying, hey, yeah, like I can sell you this, but it's more so, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, understand your pain points. I've helped people like that. Now, would you like to kind of like have me cover the the solution in a bit more detail? Would you like that? And if they say, yeah, I would, it's basically a yes, right? That them verbally agreeing to it, that commits them more to the call, locks them in, and engages them in the conversation more. Absolutely essential. You cannot skip this part. If you skip this part, you risk the sales call turning into like a demonstration and your typical run-of-the-mill sales process, where it feels like you don't even care if the pitch or the product is good or fits the prospect. You just care about pitching and like dropping the price and enrolling them into whatever it is that you have. This thing shows them that you've evaluated their problem, their situation, that you have worked with similar clients before, and that you essentially let go of the hose of control, and you basically give them back a bit of the control, and then they double confirm that they'd like to continue, right? So now the pitch is very simple. The pitch is a couple of things about the pitch that I'd like to share with you is, number one, your pitch needs to be a framework, right? That's important. When you pitch your product, if you are, for example, selling a business coaching, and if the way you describe your business coaching is very erratic, and you essentially start talking in general, it's like, yeah, our coaching program is a 12-week program, and we help you to dial your lead gen. We have video courses and coaching calls, and it's like really awesome, and the price is $9,000. It sounds okay, but it's not really optimal. The best and the most optimal way to produce your pitch, or to give it, is to turn it into a framework. And the framework would sound like this. It would turn your typical pitch, and it would turn it into a product, almost like a tangible thing that the prospect gets. And if it's tangible, it seems more valuable and it feels more actionable to the prospect. And here's how it looks in an example. So if you're again, let's say, pitching a lead generation program, let's say like it's a lead generation coaching program, you would say our framework, the product X, works in 4 different steps. Step number 1 is a universal audit. This is where we sit down with you and we essentially look in way more depth about what is it that you're doing, and we understand and pinpoint the specific problems in your business. And the reason why the audit part is essential is because there's 10 things you can do with your lead gen, and we sit down with you and we pinpoint the 4 specific problems. And this is what really sets us apart from the rest of the courses, because they give you all the 10, and you essentially thin out your time on 10 things, and half of them you may not even need. This way we make sure that you focus on the few that you really need, and it helps you to double down your efforts on them and like really knock out a park and get extraordinary results like super quick. You see how this is different from, it's a 12-week program and we offer coaching calls. Now, another important point, it's probably the second biggest point when it comes to the pitch, is what you want to do after each question is you want to ask them a question about their questions regarding that point, right? Let me actually turn it here, like questions. So here I'll explain you what that means. So after explaining each point, you want to ask them what questions do they have about the point that you just explained. The reason why it's probably the second most important thing to ask when it comes to then closing the prospect, with, let's say, like 70% improvement or certainty is because when you ask them questions, right, when you make them participate in your in the process of you explaining the program, it essentially makes them think critically about what you just said, and whatever questions they can ever have about your product, they will ask. And what that means is that by the time, if you ask proactively questions and they ask questions back, by the time that you finish with the pitch, they will have maximum clarity about your product. Now, here's what happens if you don't ask them to ask you questions after you explain each point. What happens is, the pitch is usually 15-20 minutes, and they again fall into this passive, low energy demonstration or presentation mode where they're listening, but because you're talking all the time, they get all sorts of questions about all sorts of points. Remember, you're explaining them a new product or a new program that they're not familiar about. It may seem obvious to you, but they don't know what it is. They're hearing about it for the first time, and they probably have a gazillion questions. But if they don't ask you, and you immediately go into the next phase, which is dropping the price, dropping price. If you go immediately from here, and they still have questions that they haven't asked you, well, my friend, this tanks and lowers the likelihood of closing them as a client by at least 80%. Because the biggest killer of any sales process is uncertainty. Uncertainty. I hope I write this right. Uncertainty. The biggest sales objection that prevents 99% of sales calls from ever turning into a positive win is when a prospect still has unanswered questions about your product, your sales process, your working process, and because you just blow past the script without engaging them actively, they still have questions in their head that they didn't have opportunity to ask, and now you drop the price and they got what they needed from a sales call. Every prospect just wants to hear the price, and they still have uncertainty in their head, and after you drop the price, all they want to do is run away from the call as soon as possible because, oh my God, after you drop the price, they're supposed to buy, right? But everybody wants to drag their feet and they don't want to essentially pay the money now, which is a totally normal reaction of most prospects, and you shouldn't be afraid by it. And you could argue, this is really when that real sales call begins. But if it begins with a prospect still having a bunch of uncertainty and questions about your program, well, that makes the process incredibly difficult, because to try to get uncertainty out of a prospect after you drop the price is incredibly difficult, because when you drop the price, a prospect shuts down because their expectation of them having to pay you money on the call goes up by like tenfold, right? And they shut down, kind of like going over defensive, which is again a normal reaction. But you don't want to make it difficult for yourself and essentially get them to this. Don't make it difficult for yourself, and alleviate and handle as much of uncertainty as possible way before you drop the price here. So when you're explaining the steps of the framework, you want to encourage them as much as possible to ask you all sorts of questions, even if this process, the pitch process, stretches out for 50 freaking minutes and doubles your sales call. Do it, because every question that you answer in this phase is going to be a bonus point in your piggy bank of the likelihood of closing the client after you drop the price. And then, obviously you can explain step number 2, number 3, number 4, and after each question, after explaining each point here, you have to ask them what questions do they have about that point specifically. Now, don't just ask them, you can, but don't just ask them, hey, do you have any questions? Because we are naturally trained to say, no, I don't. Because if you ask someone if they have any questions, we're naturally trained to think that if we have questions, then we're stupid, right? Only very few people have the kind of like the lack of ego to proactively ask you questions. Most people don't want to come off as stupid and they'll automatically say no. However, if you rephrase the question and instead of saying, hey, do you have any questions? If you ask, what questions do you have about this specifically, that already assumes and allows the prospect to have questions about the subject matter. They're going to ask you questions more positively. And if they say, I don't have any questions, it's a more confident, essentially, exhibition and a more confident, assurance of them not having any questions. Again, if you ask, do you have questions about this? They're naturally inclined to say no. But if you make them think critically and already kind of like assume that they already have questions by asking, what questions do you have about that specifically? They'll either ask you questions or they'll more certainly say no because they'll really thought about it and they'll really said no because it's not an automatic response. It's something that they actually thought about. So this is pitch. Now you might be wondering why I left number 6 open. Is because this process is the next secret card that makes the script different from most sales processes. When it comes to temp checking, let me have a sip of water. When it comes to temp checking, this is another time when you're going to take a small step back and pull the prospect back in by asking them questions and allowing them participate in the sales process. So what happens is when you drop the pitch, what do you want to say is, what you want to ask or qualify for is how much they actually like the product, right? On, let's say, a scale from 1 to 10. The way this typically works is this way. So you drop the pitch, and then you're going to say, hey, Mark, cool. So I just explained to you the entire A to Z, right? The entire process that we put our clients through, that I believe can also improve your lead gen by at least 30% and help you go from 10 to 30K per month. What I'm trying to understand now is how you feel about the program. So what do you feel like? Do you feel like this program is really, like, it can really help you to nail your goals and again take you from 10 to 30K? What do you think, right? And the mark is supposed to give you a very positive answer. Say, yeah, I feel great. If a mark says, yeah, I feel great, then you move on to the next step in the process. But what it does is that it kind of like gives you assurance that, okay, Mark really feels good about the product and he does not have any more uncertainty about the product. He does not have uncertainty about the product, right? And again, remember, uncertainty is the biggest killer, right, of closing a sales call. And uncertainty basically means uncertainty about the product or uncertainty about them being able to get results from your product. But if they don't have uncertainty and if they're certain, well then, if you drop the price and they don't buy, this limits the possibilities or the reasons for why they don't want to buy it to only a few select reasons like logistics or genuine pricing issues that are much easier to handle because they're objective problems like, hey, I have money coming in like 3 days and then I'll be able to pay you, is a much easier thing to handle, a much easier objection to handle than, oh, I'll think about it. What do you want to think about? Oh, I don't know. I just want to kind of like, think about what we just discussed. What the hell is the problem? What's the objection? You don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. You can't fight an invisible enemy. So what you do here is you try to make the enemy visible by eliminating the biggest enemy, which is uncertainty, right? So you ask them how they feel. Now, if they say, I feel amazing, fantastic, this is what I need, let's fucking go, then that's great. Then that gives you permission to go to just dropping the price, right? The most simple thing ever. However, if you feel uncertainty in their assurance or in their confidence in the product, what you can also say is, okay, just so that, we're 100% aligned that this is truly the thing that will help you, right? To fix your lead gen. And it's really important for me to know, how you feel about the product and that it can really help you. And if you don't feel that way, then I guess I'm more than happy to discuss more about, how we can make sure that this product does work for you. Let's make it easy for you, Mark. On a scale from 1 to 10, give me a random number about how you feel about, this process. 1 being, oh my God, this is, I hate this. I really don't want this. This is not going to work for me. And 10 being, this is exactly and pretty much the only thing that will ever help me. I have 100% confidence in Nazim and his team in helping me figure this out. And then they're supposed to give you a number, 1 to 10. And here's the rule of thumb here. I'll just drag it here. Anything below 7 is bad. 7 or less, actually. So what you really need is either 8, 9, or 10. 10, very few people will tell you that, right? People are generally risk averse and they don't want to seem too eager. But 8 or 9 is good. Like Cole Gordon likes to say, nobody ever did anything meaningful at 7 out of 10 or less, right? Now, if someone does tell you 7, that's a cue to not drop the price. Guys, do not drop the price if it's at 7 or below. They're not going to buy. And this is another ninja reason why you do temp checking, to pull them back in and to try to even see if it makes sense to drop the price in the first place. Do not drop the price if it's at 7 or below, because they clearly don't like the product or they don't believe it's going to work for them. So what's the point? Dropping the price is kind of like giving away your biggest card, like in your sleeve, because there's a good saying that when it comes to sales calls, all a salesman wants to do is sell, roughly speaking, and then all a prospect wants to do is learn about the price and leave the call by not spending money, right? Prospects don't want to take immediate action because it's uncomfortable. Parting with money is always difficult. It's not an objective or tangible thing. It's an emotional. Money is an energy, right? And it's tied into our fears and into our goals and deepest desires and deepest energies and emotions. And parting with that is always a difficult process, and you have to respect that as a salesperson. You have to respect that, and you have to recognize that and acknowledge that, right? So you want to make it easy for you and do as much as possible, right, to simplify this process and essentially drop the price with as much assurance as possible that this is really what the prospect needs. Prospect really wants this. And then if they say 8 or 9 or 10, then you will know with, let's say, 80% assurance that this is not really uncertainty about the product. They like the product. They really believe I can help them. And then, if they don't buy, then it's either one of the few objective, typically problems, which is logistics, genuine lack of money, etc., etc. Now, the next step in the process, the last one, which I won't get into in this video too deep, but I will in the future ones, is objection handling. But I'll still cover a little bit here. So when it comes to objection handling, what Cole likes to call it is pacing the first objection. Pacing the first objection. And what he means by first objection is potential lack of certainty. So what he likes to say is, for example, you drop the price, right? And you say it's $5,000 and they say, I'll think about it. What you say then is you say, no problem, totally understand that. But Mark, just so I'm clear, I just want to kind of like touch back on it again. Money aside, if money is not an issue whatsoever, how do you actually feel about the product? Do you feel that it can help you to go from 10K to 30K per month? And do you actually feel like my product XYZ can help you solve your problem? And if they say, yeah, I feel great about it, it only double confirms their lack of lack of uncertainty. And then that means that it's truly, again, in most cases, that it's truly an objective or tangible kind of like objection, right? So it's either down to pricing, logistics, or maybe it can be also spousal objections, which, by the way, you have to take care of somewhere here in the information gathering process. You have to ask them what the leadership structure looks like, and if there'll be anyone else partaking in the decision making. But I'll get into that in later videos. But essentially, the reason why these especially the pricing and logistical issues are easy issues is because now you know that the prospect absolutely 100% likes the product and wants to do it. It's just going to be a matter of honest discussion about making the logistics and pricing works. So therefore, you can be very honest and upfront with the prospect. If it's a pricing issue or a logistical issue, let's say it's a pricing issue, you can say, Mark, that sounds great. And I see that you really like the XYZ program and you really believe in it, which makes me think that it's mostly a financial issue, right? It's just a matter of making the payment terms work. Is that true? And if Mark says yes, well, then you get into finding like a solution, like a payment plan, right? And in theory, Mark is supposed to take it, right? Because Mark just said that he feels 9 out of 10. He double confirmed that he feels good about it, that he doesn't have any uncertainty, and it's just a matter of making the pricing works. That's it, guys. So via my legendary chicken scratches, I explained to you the general process. As you can see, again, it's not your typical, hey, ask some questions, drop the price, talk about the product and drop the price, right? Or pitch and then drop the price. There's a lot of nuances that goes into this. If you really want to nail your sales calls, it's not just about kind of like going through the entire thing. It's also about pulling back the prospect in a strategic way and at strategic points, and then temp checking them also, right? To make sure that they understand what is it that you sell, they feel good about it. And if you do that well, then that's going to allow you to do minimal work when it comes to objection handling, because if you do it well, you will isolate the objections down to just pretty much a couple of very basic things. That's it. Thanks for watching my video. If you'd like to hear more about my consulting services, you can go to nazimconsulting.com. There'll be a link in the description down below, and submit an application form where I can go over your entire business model, which is the offer, lead generation, and sales, and pinpoint exactly where it's broken. If you're watching this sales video and if you have a concern that your sales process is broken, then I'm more than happy to look at your sales process also and run you through this grid or through this matrix, but like actually in more depth, and give you personalized advice on what needs to be fixed. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll talk to you soon.